Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to make a very easy yet impressive fall, potentially holiday dessert. We're going to be making Tarte Tatin from Outlander Kitchen 2, Teresa Carl Sanders' second Outlander cookbook. And it's super easy because you can use pre-made puff pastry. I haven't made this before, but a long time ago I made a tarte tatin au poire, which is the same thing but made with pears, and it's kind of an upside down apple pie. But the other one I made was pears, but I haven't made this, so we're going to do that today. And I had a sheet of puff pastry left over from, I don't remember, I think I made a turkey pot pie with puff pastry on top, but this we're going to use this for our tarte tatin. And the first thing I need to do is to roll this out to about an 1/8 of an inch thickness. So I've got some flour, and I've got some of my other things here. Using up some of my room, but we're going to lightly flour our surface here. This has been in the refrigerator. I meant to make this like last weekend, but things happened in our life and it didn't happen. So this has actually been in the refrigerator for a few days, not the whole time, but I was going to make it in the middle of the week. And anyway, it just never happened. So hopefully I didn't ruin it by leaving it in the refrigerator. So we have to get this opened up gently, gently. There we go. There we go. And we need this to be 1/8 of an inch thick and big enough to cover this 10-inch cast iron skillet or other oven-proof heavy pan that can go on the stove and in the oven. So I think this is already pretty thin. So I'm just going to try to make it fit. Turn this upside down on top and see. I think I need it a little bit bigger. Just a little bit. And just sort of cut around. I know it will be a little bit too big for the inside dimensions, but we're going to kind of tuck it around the contents. So these scraps, I was thinking you could make something pretty with them, could put on top, like leaves, bake them with some cinnamon sugar. I might try that. I'm not sure I'll show you me trying that because I'm not sure how well I'm going to do, but we need to put this in the freezer now. So I'm going to try to get this up off of stretch it back out a little bit, just make sure that that's okay. And this has to go in the freezer until we're ready for it. I'm going to throw these pieces on here as well so I can deal with them later. I don't know. Because puff pastry, you want to keep it cold. What makes it puff is the butter melting in the oven, creating the layers. So we want to keep this really cold until we do put it in the oven. So now I have my apples, which she suggests Gala or Granny Smith. I obviously have Granny Smith. You want something that's going to maintain its shape as it cooks. So different apples do different things when they are cooked. These will maintain their shape. I need to peel, core, and quarter these. So I'm going to do that and put them in this bowl. So I'll be doing that for a little while. Apples are all prepared, and I don't care if they get a little bit brown because we're going to cook them. So they're going to kind of turn brown anyway. But now we have to make a caramel in here. So we're going to sprinkle the sugar, just granulated sugar, and we're going to put this over medium-high heat and cook it until it is a dark amber syrup that's just starting to smoke, swirling it occasionally, but do not stir with a spoon. That's in all caps. Sugar can crystallize if you do that. So fingers crossed, this will work out. I have some butter in the refrigerator that's been diced up, and that's we're going to add to this when that's all done. I'm sure we will show you a little bit of that process, but I don't know how long it's going to take, but I've got to watch it. And yeah, I'm kind of nervous about this part, so. But if you mess it up, it's just sugar, start over. So, medium-high heat. We'll see how long it takes. All right, not quite all of my not quite all of my sugar has melted and caramelized, but the rest is a nice dark amber, and it's been smoking, and I've had to turn the heat down. Anyway, it's not great. Well, I mean, it's not perfect, but we're adding some butter now. This is cold butter, and this is probably going to splatter. But we're going to stir this in off of the heat. And this will help it make a nice caramel sauce, not just a sticky candy caramelly thing. So that will also help the rest of that sugar sort of dissolve. If I feel like I need to put this back on the heat just to get the butter all incorporated, because I don't want a layer of butter. I want this to be sort of one sauce. I might have to put it back on the heat a little bit, but that's because the butter was cold. Oops. Yeah, I think I'm going to put it back on the heat, on the burner, and maybe a low heat just until I get this into a sauce, and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay. I ended up getting out the whisk and helping this along a little bit, and I think that with where my caramel was and all of that and how fast it happened, and maybe my pan wasn't as hot as it could be, I think it just didn't quite work out for me, but that's okay. We've got it now. And so what I need to do is pack the apple quarters very tightly in a circle around the edge, rounded sides down, because you got to remember, we're going to turn this upside down for serving. So I think that needs to go the other way. So that is going to be our presentation side. Also be careful, it's very hot. And I might have to pack these a little bit differently to try to get them all in. A little bit more, we'll see. Sure. I guess that'll have to be good enough. Anyway, so we made all of our apples fit. Okay. Now I need some melted butter. So give me 1 second. We're going to brush these with some melted butter. And there we go. Now this goes into a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes before we do anything else. So 30 minutes. See you back here. This has been in the oven for half an hour, just pulled it out, and now we have frozen disc of dough that I'm going to put here, and it's supposed to kind of melt, and I should be able to tuck it in. It is not doing so very quickly. I'm supposed to put about 5 holes with a sharp knife, 4 to 5 holes. It's hard to, I mean, it's hot, so tucking it down the sides, I've got an idea. I'm going to try to help it along a little bit. There we go. Some of it is doing better than others. Anyway. Smells delicious, like cooked apples. Anyway. That seems good. I'm going to put, actually, probably going to do something with and put these in the freezer again, just so I can do something with them after this comes out of the oven, because I don't really have room to bake them, and it doesn't really matter. We have an hour after this is done before we need to do anything with it and turn it over. So this goes back in the oven, same temperature, for 40 to 45 minutes until it's all golden brown and puffed up. There we go. So we'll see you in about 45 minutes. All right. It's been about 43 minutes that this has been in the oven, and decided it's done. It's very brown, puffed up, crispy, but now we need to let it cool for about an hour before we turn it over, and I'm not looking forward to that. But we'll see. We'll hope that it all goes well. So we'll see you back in about an hour. It's been cooling for an hour. The pan is still warm, but I can touch it. I'm supposed to run a knife along the edge just to loosen it up. And we're going to hope everything comes out like it is supposed to. All right. I'm nervous. Well, it did not all come out like it was supposed to, but ooh, feel like it's a little bit overcooked. These apples, they seem almost applesauce like, and not they did not keep their shape as expected, I think as intended. I feel like we probably didn't need to cook it all for 30 minutes, but I'm sure it will still taste delicious. Yeah, I'm definitely going to bake up some of those scraps that I had to kind of make this prettier. I think I'm going to brush them in melted butter, put some cinnamon sugar on them, try to make them look pretty, and we'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make Tarte Tatin from Teresa Carl Sanders' second Outlander kitchen cookbook. Mine turned out okay. I think I cooked it for a little over 40 minutes after we put the puff pastry on it. And then we didn't eat it right away. I think you're supposed to let it cool. You're not supposed to eat it really hot. I don't think. I don't know. But you do let it cool for an hour. It did not turn out like all of the apples didn't come out exactly as they should have. And the ones that didn't come out were a little bit mushy. I think my apples didn't need the full, I think, total of almost an hour and 15 minutes that they were in the oven. I don't think they needed quite that long because generally they are supposed to, you're supposed to be able to see the shape of the apples, and we could not see the shape of the apples. They were really more like just a layer of apple, kind of mushy. So I think that it may be different for different apples. I think mine didn't need quite that long. I probably could have just put the crust on and baked it only for that amount of time. At 30 minutes, they were not mushy for sure when we first put the pastry on. So I think they needed more than 30 minutes, but less than an hour and 15. So, but the pastry needed about 40, 45 minutes to cook itself. So if I do this again, I would cut down that time a little bit. Also had a little bit of a problem with my pan and my stove actually getting the caramel to work quite right. But that was absolutely fine because honestly, since I was able to get some of it, I was able to get it mostly caramelized. I did have to stir. But because of, I think that's just because of the way the distribution of heat on my stovetop was working for me. And I definitely had to turn the heat down because it was going a little bit too fast in some spots and not melting at all in others. You can add a little bit of water to help even that out. And then by the time it gets to the correct temperature color, the water is gone. And so you don't really run a risk of hurting your caramel. Anyway, so I did have to kind of mess with that a little bit. The end result was a little bit tart because we used the tart apples and there was not a whole lot of sugar in it. So if you use a tart apple, you end up with a tartar product, not as sweet. I thought it was fine, but if you don't like, if you want a really sweet dessert, you'll probably want to use a sweeter apple, like I believe she suggests a Gala, which would be sweeter than a Granny Smith, which is what I used. So could probably also do a little more sugar for the caramel part in the beginning and it will be just fine. And also I think that the butter, when we added the butter to the caramel, it was hard to get it very much incorporated. I had to turn the heat back on. And I think that's probably because it was chilled. And maybe my pan wasn't quite as hot as it could have been because it happened, the original melting caramel process happened very quickly. And those pans take a while to heat up and to actually retain the heat, but whatever. It all worked out and it tasted good. I think I would need a few tweaks if I were going to do it exactly like this and make it look exactly like it should. But I thought it was delicious. She says to serve it with clotted cream, which was in the first Outlander Kitchen Cookbook, but we have not made that yet. Creme fraiche, which we have made previously on this channel, or you can buy it. If I can find where we've made it, I'll link it up there. Or just vanilla ice cream, which sadly we didn't have. We usually have some in the freezer, but we had recently apparently finished it, and I didn't realize it until after I got back from the grocery store that day. So I just made some bourbon chantilly cream like we made for, I think it was something from Rodney Scott. I'll link that up there, but that was perfectly fine. And that's another area where you can add sweetness if you prefer a sweeter dessert. So the vanilla ice cream would have added a little more sweetness there if you wanted it, if you wanted that. It's up to you, whatever you like. Anyway, I think this is a really easy dessert. I know it sounded like everything went wrong, but in the end, it was still pretty and edible. Oh, I did take the scraps and make a little flour, so you'll see that on the pictures. Baked those up with a little cinnamon and sugar on them after everything else was done, just to cover up where it kind of didn't look so nice because it didn't come out of the pan very well. But again, I think that was probably because the apples were a little overcooked, and if they hadn't been cooked as much, they probably would have come out easier. But that's just my own feeling about it. I haven't tried it again yet. But I think this could be a really impressive and really easy dessert that you can do for guests in the fall. It really doesn't take a whole lot of time, and all you have to do is peel some apples and cut up some pre-made puff pastry. Speaking of, we have made the puff pastry from the original Outlander Kitchen Cookbook, and I will link that around here as well. And you could use that instead of store-bought if you really want to, but you don't have to. Store-bought is fine. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying this again, maybe making a few alterations and seeing how that works out. But it'll probably be a little while because we've got a lot of holiday cooking to do. But if you've enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week. Maybe a holiday meal? We'll see.